Hello dear viewers, I'm Lamia Rafshangazer, and this week once again I welcome you to another episode of Weekly Western Azerbaijan program on Western Azerbaijan television. In today's episode, we'll review the most significant developments related to Western Azerbaijan and discuss the key events shaping the current socio-political agenda. As part of our weekly overview, we'll highlight the community's diplomatic initiatives, its international engagements, and the events held within the country, offering a comprehensive picture of how the Western Azerbaijan issue is advancing across multiple dimensions. A major focus of this week's program is the third international conference titled Cultural Heritage and the Right of Return, organized by the Western Azerbaijan community. The conference served as an important platform for presenting the realities of Western Azerbaijan on solid scientific and legal foundations at both regional and global levels. Among the central topics discussed were the systematic destruction of cultural heritage, the approach of international law to these challenges, and the legitimacy of the right of return. These discussions once again underscored that this issue extends beyond the regional context and constitutes a matter of global human rights concern. The participation of distinguished scholars and political figures added strong academic and political depth to the conference, facilitating in-depth analysis as well as the exploration of practical and sustainable solutions. Welcome and thank you, Dr. Gunter. We greet you once again in Azerbaijan. You're one of the participants of the third international conference. At the conference, we'd like to hear your general impressions about the event. Please share with us.
I was very impressed with how many people were at the conference. I think maybe 300 or 400 people, many representatives from around the world. And the conference was very professional. We had outstanding paraphernalia to have translations and to effectively communicate.
At the conference, the Western Azerbaijan issue was at the forefront, but we'd like to know your opinion on this. In the prism of international law, how should we respond to such systematic violations? And in general, what's your opinion on such incidents in international law?
Well, from the point of view of international law, it's clear you're not allowed to destroy the cultural property of another side. Unfortunately, that's what happens in our world today, and it's very regrettable. Therefore, I'm very pleased that Azerbaijan, after 20 years of occupation of Karabakh, was able to regain this land and begin to reconstruct this lost heritage, which is so important for the culture of your nation.
In your future activities, how will you present the Western Azerbaijan issue? How will this be seen by the eyes of Dr. Gunter? And how will you inform the people around you about this?
Well, my work will be difficult because I'm not aware whether you have seen it, but within 24 hours of the conference, I saw Armenian propaganda on the internet criticizing me for even being here, for even talking about the situation. And I think that in the West, there's a lot of misunderstanding about the Azerbaijani heritage. And it'll be difficult for me to overcome this prejudice against your culture brought on by the Armenian diaspora in the United States. However, I will do my best to present my thoughts. And one thing that I have going for me is I have been able to publish a number of books and articles in the Western press which infuriate the Armenians, but give a certain amount of credibility to what I say about the challenged and lost heritage of the Western Azerbaijani community.
Now let's move into the issue of the right of return. The right of return of Western Azerbaijanis has been in the UN documents for years. At the same time, those UN documents were also reflected in the Karabakh issue. We'd like to hear your views on the legal nature and implementation mechanisms of these documents. That is, there were 4 UN resolutions on the sovereign territory of Karabakh and Azerbaijan in general, and those resolutions required the withdrawal of Armenian armed forces from there. However, these decisions were not implemented for years. Finally, as a result of the decisive policy pursued by the Azerbaijani leader, we implemented those UN decisions at our own expense and showed the world that justice exists, and we restored this justice ourselves. Similarly, the rights of Western Azerbaijanis have been violated for years. We have lived a life of refugees, and I am one of those refugees. I was also expelled from Western Azerbaijan, the territory of present-day Armenia, when I was a child. Now I want to return. However, some circles present our right of return as political rhetoric, as if we were making territorial claims. However, we wanted to return to the land of our birth. What do you think is the reason for this approach? How can we explain in this matter that we have no territorial claims, we just want to return to our homeland?
I understand your desire to return. However, I can point out to you that although international law is on your side and you legally have a right to return, in the world we live in today, things have gotten a lot worse. And your president, Ilham Aliyev, I think wisely understood after 20 years of international law being on your side and nothing happening, that the only way you were going to regain some of your rights and territory was by your own military force. And I compliment him for that. There's nothing wrong. You have a right under international law to exercise self-defense when international law is not being implemented. That's one thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say, I greatly sympathize with your desire to return to your lost lands in what is now Armenia. But do you really want to return to a country where the majority of people in the government hate you? How comfortable, how even safe will you be there?
We, Dr. Gunter, want our return to be carried out in peace within the framework of international law. We're not afraid of Armenians, and I think that Armenians should not be afraid of us either. Sometimes the issue of security is raised. Supposedly, there may be some risks if we go there, but we're absolutely not afraid. Those are our historical lands. There are cemeteries where our grandfathers and grandmothers sleep. Although many of them have been destroyed, we still want to extend a hand of peace, return to our lands, our homes, and revive them. I personally would return to the village where I was born with great pleasure. Currently, about 30,000 Armenians live in Baku and in Azerbaijan in general, and we do not say where to them. We live with them in the same way as we used to live normally. The same offer was made to the Armenians who left Karabakh. If they accept Azerbaijani citizenship, they can live here and there will be no threat to them. Therefore, I think that if it is politically possible, we will return with great pleasure. The responsibility here lies primarily with the leadership of Armenia. They must show their people the right path, create conditions for peoples to live together, ensure communication and movement. We may not be friends, but we no longer want enmity. We're fighting for peace, and we believe that peace will save our future.
This is a very difficult situation. I think there are some positive possibilities. As you know, the president of my country, Donald Trump, brought together in the White House this summer President Aliyev of Azerbaijan and Nikol Pashinyan, the Prime Minister of Armenia, and had the two even shake hands with each other. And I am impressed with Prime Minister Pashinyan that he is not only a loyal Armenian, but understands that for the good of the Armenian people, you need to have peace where you compromise with your former enemies and not continue to claim in your constitution that you own part of Eastern Anatolia, which is Turkey, and part of Azerbaijan as your own property. So we have a peace process that is very tentative that's going on right now, and I would encourage Azerbaijan, which is in a much more powerful position, to work closely with Prime Minister Parsinian and make it clear to the people in Armenia that there is some value for the Armenian people to follow their Prime Minister and cooperate with Azerbaijan, because there are a lot of people, especially in the Armenian diaspora, who find it very easy to say, let's go to war again and get back all our lost property. This is a difficult situation. If I may say one more thing here, I'm an American, and I listen to the Armenian propaganda in the United States all the time. The Armenian diaspora in the United States is prosperous and finds it very easy to encourage the Armenian people in Armenia to continue struggling. It doesn't hurt the Armenian diaspora in the United States, but it hurts the Armenian people who live in Armenia. And so the problem, I think, is not so much the Armenian people themselves living in Armenia, but the diaspora in countries like the United States and France, and I think probably Russia too, who are living room patriots. It's very easy for them to say, let's go to war again and so forth, because they're safe in the United States and France and Russia, and it's the Armenian people themselves who suffer. The Armenian people need help from Turkey and Azerbaijan. They're surrounded, landlocked, and if we could have an agreement, it would not only be good for the Azerbaijani people, they could return to their lost homelands in what is now Armenia, and the Armenian people themselves could begin to have a more prosperous life without having to be constantly blockaded by Turkey and the other enemies of Armenia in the Caucasus. But the problem, I think, is the diaspora.
The unity of Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and the brave army of Azerbaijan, the union of our people like an iron fist, has expelled all doubt. After the Karabakh victory, our faith in the return to Western Azerbaijan has become even stronger. We're absolutely sure that we will return, and it will be in a peaceful way. We've never wanted war. We have been drawn into war. Our lands had been occupied. But this time, we intend to return in a peaceful way. I think that the establishment of lasting peace in the South Caucasus depends on the return of Western Azerbaijanis to their native lands, and we will achieve this. I'd like to thank you too. Thank you very much for coming to our studio. Even though it was within the framework of the conference, we were very pleased to see you here.
I'm impressed that we have one nation and two states. The one nation is the Turkic nation. The two states are Turkey and Azerbaijan. And you have a good friend in Turkey and President Erdogan. I think that I would encourage you to continue to work with your Turkish cousins, and also the other countries, your neighbors, Iran and Russia. These are difficult neighbors, but you have got to have an understanding with them. And I also would add to you, I think the United States understands the importance of Azerbaijan, and the United States is a potentially increasingly valuable ally for you, as witnessed by the meeting in the White House this summer with President Trump.
Dear viewers, we've come to the end of today's episode of Weekly Western Azerbaijan. As you've seen, this edition of our program was somewhat different. Our guest this time was a foreign expert visiting a country in connection with an international conference, one of the participants of the Third International Conference on Cultural Heritage and the Right of Return, organized by the Western Azerbaijan community, and a professor at Tennessee Technological University in the United States, Dr. Michael Gunter. I was your host, Lamia Roshangazi. We look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Stay well.